Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Livewire TV. I am super psyched to have you here on this amazing day so far. I hope you've all had a really good start to the week so far, no matter where you're at in the world, what's going on in your crazy life at the moment. I know things are very, very interesting at the moment with everything that's going on in the world. So yeah, some of you saw my preview yesterday with the amazing book mentor, aka Karen Williams. Karen has been in the game for so many years. She's got so much experience in what she does. And that's why I'm super excited to bring her on today, because one, everything that she's going to teach you is super transferable. Two, it's incredible. So you need to stick around and watch it. So if you're new here, first of all, welcome. This is Livewire TV. We are a part of Livewire Media, where we basically do like corporate photography, videography, and video marketing. And this is like a vodcast that we set up as well to interview business experts in their areas of expertise, whatever that may be, and specifically around like mindset, business strategy, and marketing strategies as well. So we're actually taking bookings for next year. So if you are interested in getting in front of hundreds and hundreds of viewers, just like what Karen is doing right now, drop us a message and we'll be sure to have a little chat with you to see whether or not it will be for you or not. So first of all, my name is Rohini. I'm super psyched to have you here. Karen and I connected a couple of weeks ago now, actually. I think we just hit it off straight away because we have so much in common. First of all, we both love reading. We both love helping other people as well. And Karen, I'm going to hand it over to you to give us a bit of a brief introduction as to who you are.
Gosh, thanks, Rohini. Thanks for inviting me today. So I'm known as the book mentor. My company's Librotas. And this month I celebrate 14 years in business, which is pretty scary. I know I don't look old enough, do I? I'd love to say that. I started out in business November 2006 trained as a coach, later trained as an NLP master practitioner. And my journey really kind of evolved hugely in 2009. I'd been running my business for 3 years. I was having some success, but I was struggling with the business side of things. This is obviously pre a lot of the stuff we do now. So, this type of thing was not really prevalent back then. It was very much, through networking and meeting people and who you knew. But I made the decision in 2009 to write my first book when I was interviewing some amazing coaches to find out what was the difference that made the difference between a coach who was successful and somebody who wasn't. And that research made me realize I had to get what I knew out into the hands of more people. And for me, that just felt like the natural next step. So that book took me 18 months from start to finish, and hard work and inner turmoil and everything else that so many authors go through when they decide to write a book. But 18 months later, I stood up in front of 70 people at my book launch party. And although I said never again after that first book, I've got 6 in the bag now, published my latest one, Becoming an Authority, on audio last year. And yeah, for the last 6 years, I've been supporting other business owners to write their books. So typically I work with business owners, typically those providing a service, so coaches, consultants, trainers, therapists, marketers, accountants, so people that have got a lot of knowledge to share or maybe a story. And I help them to get their ideas out of their head into a book that helps them to build their business. So it's typically non-fiction, self-help, how-to book or memoir. So that's a very potted history of 14 years in business.
That's it's a very specific niche that you've got into. So I'm just curious, what was it that like really intrigued you about it?
I think it was 2013, and I was business coaching at the time, and I was working with a lot of clients who were very much like me when I started out. And like me, they also saw I was writing my third book at the time, and they said, Karen, you've written a couple of books. How do you do it? And I went, well, it's easy, because I love writing. I find it quite easy. I'm quite a structured person, so I can see the ideas forming in front of me quite easily. And not everyone's like me. So during that year of 2013, I started helping some of my clients to write their books alongside their business. And then actually I thought, you know what, there's a real emerging market here, an emerging market of people like me who want to make a bigger difference in the world, who want to get noticed, who wants to get their ideas out of their head. And actually, it's something I find easy. And in 2014, I rebranded and I really put myself out there as the book mentor. And I've worked with hundreds of clients since then on all sorts of topics. So topics from people, cancer, childlessness, divorce, autobiographies, nutrition, finance, funerals, all sorts of topics that really just help my clients to grow their businesses as a result. And that is just an amazing to be part of it and actually see their eyes light up when they have their book in their hand for the first time. It's amazing.
I gotta ask, what's the weirdest project you've ever worked on?
Gosh, I don't know if I had a weird project. No, I don't think I have ever worked on a weird project.
One, is there one that stands out to you the most?
Not particularly. I think every client's different in terms of the type of thing they come to me with. For me, the most important thing is they're writing a book that they're passionate about, that is definitely aligned to their business. I've not had any weird projects. The book A Funeral Service was the most different in terms of the fact that it was aimed towards people who are going through bereavement, so giving them the tools, the techniques, and the resources more than anything. So the poems, the hymns, and what happens and when. I suppose that was the most slightly different book I've dealt with, in as much as it was very targeted in a particular area. But I say every client and every book has been different.
Yeah, I can imagine, because every business owner is different as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that are watching this right now live with us, they're very much they're used to digital marketing, so photography, videos, that kind of thing. But the idea of becoming an authority in their space through writing a book is a bit of a foreign concept to them. So why should people get involved in book writing or writing in general?
Book writing isn't for everybody, but book writing is for people who really want to make a bigger difference on a bigger scale. Because if you think about it, you put something out on social media, you put out a video, you put out a podcast, you put out a social media post, and you have a limited reach. Not everybody's going to find it, or they might scroll through Facebook and they might see you, and then they get distracted by a bright, shiny object and something else catches their eye, and then they forget who you are. But a book just helps you to reach more people. I remember with my first book, when I started getting reviews on Amazon from people I didn't know. And that's when it really hit me, of that kind of, that realization that other people were reading stuff. And it's quite scary as well. But you have such a wider reach. And if your book is on somebody's bookshelf, people are more likely to find you and remember you than through any other platform. And I think when you've got a lot of knowledge to share, and it's really thinking about how that knowledge will link to your business, because writing a book about anything isn't necessarily going to support a business, but writing a book that's totally aligned with what you want to do is the thing that's going to help the most.
So here's a bit of it, and this might sound like a really daft question, but coming from somebody who is in the visual marketing space, how would someone like myself, for example, write a book? Because obviously people want to see what I physically do. They can't grasp that from a book. How do you kind of overcome that with some of your clients?
So it really depends on who your ideal client is. If your ideal client is an entrepreneur and they're doing video, a book that helps people to do video themselves is a really great thing to do, because you can take people through the process and maybe some of the things that they need to know about. But through a book that some people will read it and they will get everything they know. They might go off and do it themselves. And you'll get some people who read a book and go, actually, I need Rohini's help. I can't do this by myself. She is the authority. She is the expert. This is the person I need to go to. So that's really where a book makes a difference. Whereas you can guide people, you can reach more people, and you can make it easier for people. But it's looking at how. So one of the things I suggest people do is get really clear on their vision for their book. So if your vision was to potentially, raise your authority, to maybe get more clients, that type of thing, it would be a great thing to do, because your book could become a course as well. So the book kind of might be the foundation for what you do, which showcases why you're an expert. You could help people doing these sort of so do you call it a vodcast? You could write a book on podcasts.
Yeah.
That would be totally unique, wouldn't it? So how do you do a vodcast? And this could be a book, and it wouldn't have to be a long one, although I'm sure there's plenty of things involved in it. And then you could run a course off the back of the book about podcasts, and then you could work one-to-one with people who can't be bothered to do it themselves. Is there an idea?
That's actually a really good idea. Yeah, I wrote an ebook a couple of years ago because I realised that a lot of business owners, especially ones that are just starting out, like the older generation, like say the baby boomer generation, like I wrote the ebook like kind of specifically for them because the idea of going onto like YouTube or something to search how to do something was just a complete foreign concept to them. And when I looked into the market space, I actually learned that nobody in the world, out of the millions of people out there, and this really surprised me, like nobody had actually written a book on how to create videos. And in hindsight, I can understand why. Yeah. So when I wrote this ebook, literally explaining like the basic concepts of video marketing, step-by-step guide of like what to do, what not to do, people loved it. And I was genuinely surprised by that.
Well, it's all about your research. So there are 10 principles that I teach people when it comes to writing a book, to take them from, so I take people from idea to final manuscript. So most people who come to me are a little bit like you in as much as, you've got kind of maybe a concept, an idea, and you're thinking, where can I take this? How can I write it? What do I include? What do I not include? So I help people to go from I'm thinking about writing a book, I don't know where to start, through to having a final manuscript. Because a lot of the time, as business owners, we have so much knowledge. We have so many things. And actually, many clients I work with have multiple books that they should write. And I think when you've got so many ideas, it can feel quite overwhelming. So someone like myself,
especially as a creative, you just like firing up ideas.
I know. I had 3 ideas for a book over the weekend. I'm not going to go there today, but obviously I'm always coming up with new ideas. And I think you have to decide what is the right project now. So as I said, there's 10 principles I teach, and 4 of them is all about the prep. It's about making sure you're really clear on your vision for your book before you start, exactly who your book is for, so that when you're doing a video, you might be thinking, okay, so the person behind the camera is this person, this is who I'm talking to, this is my message. It's exactly the same with a book. How are you going to leverage it? So how are you going to make the most of your book as you write it, which is something I teach, as well as once you published it as well. So how do you make the most of the book? So, doing interviews and podcasts and all of those sorts of lovely things. So how can you do all of that? And also, what are you writing about? What's your secret sauce and the structure? So whenever a client works with me, I get them to nail the structure before they write a single word.
Wow. What's the typical structure for a book?
Gosh, it depends. So when I work one-to-one with clients, we get big bits of flip chart paper and post-it notes out and actually map out the chapters. So typically most people have, if you identify who your ideal reader is and you work out their pain points and what is going to draw them to your book, and then what they want to get from it, it helps you to map out the journey. So one of the things I suggest clients do is to map out the journey. So who is the person who's going to read the book? Where are they now? Where do they want to go? And how are you going to help them through the book? So it's mapping out the chapters. So, what's the first thing they need to know? What's the second thing? What's the third thing? What's the fourth thing? What stories are you going to include, or case studies? Are you going to include tips, or are you going to invite other experts to contribute bits and pieces to it? So it's thinking about the bigger picture before you get started. And when you know the structure and you know who it's for, it makes it easier to market it as you write it, which I think is just so important these days. Don't wait until your book is published before you start promoting it and building your community. It's something to think about from day one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've seen book publishers and authors do that from day one, and it's just simple posts like, hi guys, I'm writing a book today. This is chapter 1. And they'll literally kind of document their journey because is it right to say that people are just really nosy? They just want to know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, one of my clients did video blogs. So he vlogged every day, or not, I don't know if it's every day, or at least once a week, when he was writing his book a couple of years ago, because it was a really great profile raising opportunity. If a client is struggling with their book title, I suggest they put it on social media and do a poll. So they're talking about it. So it's not, it's not just about promoting. It's also about, actually, you're my community, you're people who are important, you're people who might enjoy this. What do you want to know? Doing a survey, doing interviews. There's so many different things you can do as you're writing it to actually to raise your profile, but also get some real validation from people that what you're writing is absolutely the right thing, and you're spending your time on the right project.
I love it. I love it. So why do you think there is a massive opportunity right now for business owners to just really take advantage of writing a book?
Well, I think it is survival of the fittest right now, because when things are changing, things are evolving. We're just about to come into a lockdown again, and some places are already in lockdown. It really depends on where you are. And actually, I think with the winter as well, the last time we had lockdown, it was summer. People were making the most of the weather. They were going out, they were enjoying it. I went for a walk along the beach this morning and it was blooming chilly and blowy. Not exactly the best time to do it. So I think there's a couple of ways of answering your question. I think it's the right time to write a book because you've got to stand out. So the people who are going to survive the pandemic are the people who are really standing out from the crowd. So they're asserting their authority. They're developing the courage to show up in a bigger way by writing a book. I also think there's a longevity of a book as well, in terms of it's printed, so it's something that holds so much more weight than anything else out there. Both figuratively and literally as well. So I think it's a great time to write a book if you want to stand out and you want to be seen as an authority. When I wrote my first book back in 2009, not many people were doing it, but it has become the in thing. But it's also important to write it in the right way.
Do you have to be really good at writing to create like a bestseller?
You need a really good editor. Most importantly, what I will say is that when it comes to the writing, I'm working with people whose English is their second language. I've worked with clients who are dyslexic, so you don't need to be a good writer, but you do need to write, of course. You need to be able to form your ideas. You need to be able to get your ideas out of your head. But when it comes to things like spelling and grammar and things like that, that's where a good editor comes on board. And I recommend that everybody gets an editor to help them to polish their final work. So whether you're the best writer in the world or not such a great writer, getting a really good editor on board will help you to put that final polish in place.
Fantastic. Guys, welcome to the stream. So today we are speaking with Karen Williams, aka the Book Mentor. She's an absolute legend in the space. For over literally the last 14 to 15 years, she's built up a massive reputation to help business owners, authors, really just become the authority in their space by using books and actually helping people to write books and use that to position themselves as the authority and the go-to person in their space as well. We've kind of just been talking about like why book writing in the first place and how actually it is a timeless piece. Whereas if you put something on social media, it has a certain sort of newsfeed life, if you like, but if you put it in a book, it's physically there in person. And that's literally what Karen helps people to do. She helps them get their name out there through book marketing as well. And actually that's a good point, because you help authors with the marketing process, don't you? And I know that the skills that you effectively teach them are transferable. So let's talk a little bit about that process as well, because I imagine that there's there's different strategies involved, and it's not just a cookie cutter approach, is it?
With it, like anything, everybody is different. So when you know exactly who your target market is, it makes it easier to market your business and also market your book. So if your target market, your target readers, your target clients are on LinkedIn, you'll probably spend more time over on LinkedIn doing LinkedIn lives and sharing content and maybe getting yourself involved with groups. If your target market is more on Facebook, you're more likely to spend your time on Facebook. And it really, when it comes to marketing, it's exactly the same.
Just a quick question on the audience point. How do you know who your audience is? Like, how do you go about even beginning to do research on it?
I've got some strategies I teach people around really getting clear on your avatar. And for me, everything I teach can be transferable to whether you're writing a book, promoting a book, or writing a blog and promoting a blog, or running a business. All of it is transferable at the end of the day, because everything is aligned. So if you're writing a book, having it aligned to your business is absolutely essential. So being clear on what type of client are you looking for, who do you love working with, who are your best clients already, when you know who your clients are, it's thinking about, okay, so what are their characteristics? Where do they go? What do they do? Where do they hang out? What are they struggling with, and how can you help them? And sometimes it's not necessarily a niche audience, but it's a niche problem. So it might be a problem that people are facing that you might be solving through the work that you do. So it might be a problem like, I want to get out there and do more videos, but I've got no idea where to start. The thought of turning the camera on and going live on Facebook scares the crap out of me. So it's thinking about that. And then, okay, where do they want to go? They want more confidence in doing that. And your book could, a book could help them to do that. So that's one example. So getting really clear on your audience is key, because if you're too broad, so if you're writing a book for anybody, your message gets diluted. And I see this time and time again with people where they write something, but because they want to appeal to this target audience, this target audience, and this target audience, the message gets diluted because there isn't a clear message for any of them, because it's just too broad in terms of what someone's written.
There's a saying in marketing saying that if your audience is everyone, you're actually going to sell to nobody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with that. Yeah,
because the message for like one group of people that may be interested, like that may turn off another group as well.
Yeah.
So
that's
if
a good
somebody
thing.
has got, I actually agree with you on that. If somebody has got multiple audiences, like what you've just described, how do they overcome that obstacle?
Depends really on the type of book they might write, because you could have one book that could appeal to multiple audiences. So if you think about the Chicken Soup for the Soul series by Jack Canfield, so his book was based around a concept, and then he rewrote it pretty much for different audiences. So for some people, they might want to think about, okay, so who is this first book for? And then do I have a similar book for another group of people? So, for example, I was working with Emma Heptonstall a few years ago, and she wrote the book How to Be a Lady Who Leaves, for women who are thinking about divorcing their husbands, thinking about, leaving, what do they need to consider? And she could have written that same book for men. And that was, I don't know if it's still on her agenda, but you could say, right, I'm writing this one for women, and actually this is what women need to can think about. Okay, if I was writing a book for men, what do men need to think about? So you could write the same book for two different audiences, but you would write it differently. But I think we have to think about the language we use, because if you're writing a book towards teenagers, it's very different from writing a book towards maybe adults in their later years. So it's a different tone, and it's also a different type of you need to know what your clients, your readers know, to know how to pitch it. Are you writing something that's quite technical because they've got an advanced knowledge, or are you writing something really simple because they don't know much about your topic? So all of that is just so important.
Amazing. Desi has just come onto the screen from Facebook. She just said, I always wanted to write a book. That's actually really interesting. Desi, I'd love to know let us know in the comments, what kind of a book have you thought about writing, or books even have you thought about writing? I'd love to know.
Yeah, I specifically work with non-fiction authors, so very much around the business building side of things, because ultimately from a book itself, you have to have quite a good following to make a huge amount of money from a book. And I know that's not everybody's goal and objective, but most of my clients, they make money from their book by what comes off the back of their book itself. So things like courses, one-to-one, speaking engagements, bulk sales, raising their profile once they've launched. So it's really important to think about how everything fits together. So the book is not a standalone thing over here. It's like how does everything fit in together? And that also makes it easier to write.
So the book basically becomes one of their marketing assets.
Yeah.
So once somebody has got their audience established and they know exactly who they're targeting and how to target them, like what's the next process in the marketing journey for them?
At what stage? So they've got the book idea, or they've written the book and published it already?
As in they've just established who their audience is.
So really, I would suggest what they do at that stage is actually to ask people what they want. So one of my clients has recently done a what I call a future reader survey. So she's put a survey out to people and said, hey, this is the book. What are you struggling with the most? What do you want instead? And just to get their feedback. And in doing so, she's got people who have already signed up for an ebook, which she wrote off the back of it. She's been invited to do a talk. She's got an article published online. So just by doing her research and showing up in a non-salesy research way, she's got people who are already asking for her book, who can't wait for it to be published, because they're showing up and saying, hey, I've got this problem. I'm really struggling with this. Yeah. So she now knows that she can help these people through the book. So doing your research will help you to validate your idea and whether it's the right thing to work on. And if you're someone like me, and I had 3 very different but very relevant ideas for a book recently, all related to book writing, what I will do before I decide to write any of them is put a survey out there, or probably a poll on Facebook, and finding out what people want, because there's not much point in me starting book number 1 when people say, I really want book number 3.
Yeah. You know, I do the same for video marketing as well. Yeah. So whenever I do like a batch of video marketing videos, I always put out a poll saying to people, saying, what do you want to know? Because you could take a pretty good guess, or a guesstimate, as I call it. But I think that also, like, putting out polls just gets people engaged, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's all about getting people engaged as you write it. So at every stage, you know, by showing up and saying, hey, I'm writing a book, by doing your research, by maybe sharing some of your writing with your cheerleaders or a group of people, whether it's wide or whether it's a small group of people. Yeah. It's all about, you know, just showing up in that bigger way, which is the very last principle I teach in my system.
Wow. Desi has just commented and replied saying, I got the titles first. It's 8 Days of Justice, and it's about a judicial system, or justicial system, I don't know how to say that word, in the UK, and how it works in real life. And second will be called 13 Rings, and it's about a guy proposing 13 times, and he falls in really funny situations, including when proposing the girl catching hair, fire, and restaurants. That sounds like a proper rom-com.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, I don't work with anyone doing fiction, only non-fiction, but certainly the first one about the judicial system is, yeah, absolutely. If that's aligned to Desi's business and what she wants. So the very first question I would ask Desi, I'd ask anyone writing a book, is that you're writing a book. What do you want to get known for through this book? So if you're known as the go-to person for X, what is X? And then think about your vision for your book. You know, what is your book going to give you that you don't have already? So what's it going to give you? What's it going to give your business? And also, what's it going to give your readers that they don't have already? So getting clear on all of that will help.
That's such a powerful thought that you just shared there. And I think you just kind of shared as like a bit of a throwaway comment that, like, putting out marketing for the sake of marketing is pointless. Because you got to know your purpose for it as well. And at the end of the day, like, all marketing has got to serve a purpose. And we talked briefly about this sort of offline just before the interview, where you mentioned one of your clients was doing vlogs, some of them do polls. How can people, like, build up excitement in anticipation for their book launch? Like, let's talk social media strategies or marketing strategies.
So there are 7 what I call self-funding strategies that people can do as they're writing their book. And those self-funding activities means that you're putting yourself out there as you're doing it. So one is the future reader survey, which I've already mentioned. One is what I like to call the Bob method, which is AKA doing lots of interviews with people. And they could be interviews as part of research. They could be interviews for case studies. They could be interviews with experts that you include in your book. And I've got one client who is interviewing celebrities at the moment for his book. Other thing you can do is around social media, which is just really showing up on social media, whether it's video blogs, podcasts, doing your own podcast or your own content, basically. You can, my favorite, and I do this a lot, is build the plane as you fly it. And I did this for your book as a hook, actually, and I've got a copy of all of my books here, but your book is a hook. I wrote this by following the build the plane as you fly it method. Now, the build the plane as you fly it method is when you create a concept. So I created the concept, your book is a hook, and I launched it as an online program. People signed up for it, they paid me money, and then I created it. So that is the build the plane as you fly it method. And as I did the webinars and I ran the program, I wrote the book at the same time. And that is a really great way of actually writing a book really quickly, because if you've got a webinar on Friday, you've got no excuse not to write the content. So that's one of my favorite methods. So there's 7 things that I teach. Another one is pre-selling the book. Another one is crowdfunding. And then the 7th one is sponsorship, where you get people sponsoring the book. I had a client do that really well a couple of years ago, where she had other people sponsor the book, which paid for the publication of it.
Oh, so that's really interesting.
So there are 7 distinct things that you could do to, depending on your market, depending on your audience, that you could do to get your message out there as you're writing it, and also keep you motivated, because there is something about people saying, Rahini, have you written your book yet? That keeps you motivated, whether it's in a good way or a, oh God, I need to do it way.
Yeah, because I imagine that writing a book can be quite a process, quite an interesting, possibly even stressful process as well. So I think it's nice to have those cheerleaders on your route, really. But once you've done all of that, basically, you've established your audience, you've done the marketing for it. What about publishing? Because I've heard different things about, or different benefits even, about being a self-published author versus actually going to a publishing house. What are the pros and cons around that?
For most business authors, they have a need, they have something, a problem that they're solving, and they want to bring that in line with what they're doing. If that is the case, self-publishing, professional self-publishing is a good route to take, because you can do it quickly. There's a financial cost involved, but if you know what results you're looking for and you're achieving it as you're writing it, which is what I encourage people to do, you can afford to invest in it. The advantages of that is you retain your intellectual property, you can do it quite quickly, but it has to be professional. And I've got a team of people who I recommend who can do that for you. Yeah. You can also go down the partnership route, which is when you get a team of people doing it for you, but they publish it under their brand. Again, there's a cost involved and it can take a little bit longer, but it's a fairly quick process. And then they might take some of the royalties. And of course, most people want to go down the traditional route, but it's not the best route to take in many situations. So, for example, if you want to get your book out there quickly, and maybe you've got somebody else who's at your heels with their book, actually, if you go down the traditional route, you could be waiting 18 months for your book to be out there. So although they're going to, you might get a small advance, you're probably not going to get much royalties. They could potentially, and check the contract, retain your intellectual property, which could limit what you do with it afterwards. And I think the time is the biggest thing. It can take a lot of time to get out there. And of course, who wouldn't want to be, a published author with a particular publishing house? But it's not always the right thing for the first book. So for many people, I recommend, you might want to get your first book self-published, get a little bit of, get your reviews, get people interested in it, really raise your profile with it, build your platform. And then maybe the second book, it really depends on your niche, could be the one you go down the traditional route. So as I said, there's so many options when it comes to publishing, and there are pros and cons to each of them. Yeah.
Guys, if you've got any questions for Karen, drop them in the comments below and we'll be sure to answer them. She is an absolute expert in a space when it comes to really getting stuff out there and becoming the authority using books. And actually, I remember you saying, actually, you've just recently written a book about becoming an authority in your space, haven't you? Mm-hmm. Tell us a bit about that.
The reason I wrote that one is because there's just been such an increasing number of people becoming published over the last 10 years since I wrote my first one. And I just recognized that there were some things that people were doing which weren't achieving results for them. So in reality, anyone could become an author. So you could write a book, you can put it on Amazon, and you can say I'm a published author. But it takes something special to become an authority, to actually really raise your profile with a book, to have something that works for you, that actually brings in income, brings in clients, and reaches the right people who need to read it. So that's really what the book is about. The first part of it looks at everything that's happened over the last 10 years in the publishing space, the marketing space, because, well, we know it's changed hugely in the last 10 years, incredibly
it's
fast.
Changed massively in the last 12 months, let alone the last 10 years.
I know, very true. And then it takes people through the 10 principles that I teach through all of my programs and working one-to-one, which is, all the prep that you do, the writing tips, who needs to be on your team, what happens if you go through that overwhelm or that inner dialogue stopping you, how you get it published, and also the marketing. So it takes people through the whole process. And the really great thing about writing it last year is that when lockdown happened in March, I had the strategy, I had the system for my Smart Author system, which is the online program, which I use now. So within 6 weeks, I was able to take the book and put it online and to create a really decent, in-depth program that takes people through the whole process from, I want to write a book, I feel overwhelmed, how do I get started, through to having something they're proud of. And for me, that's just, the best thing to have is having a resource for people to go through so they can write their best book.
Yeah, amazing. So that kind of brings me on to my next question actually as well, because with 14 years experience in the game, like, and my business mentor talks about this all the time, about being prepared for the inevitable to happen. When I say the inevitable, I mean, like, because anything could happen, like, literally tomorrow. And I think good marketers, they're prepared for what's to come in the future, because they would have looked at the trends and everything as well. So how can a business owner who's maybe just starting out on their first book or the second or the first few books, how can they get prepared for what's to come in the next few months?
I think it really depends on your niche and what, again, it comes down to research. What are people looking for? What do they want help with? What are they doing? What are they struggling with? So being absolutely clear on that. Certainly,
do you find that there's like a certain sort of mindset that people have to have as well?
Absolutely. When lockdown happened in March, people had two decisions. They had the decision to say, well, I'm just going to give up. I'm just not going to, do anything. I'm just going to go down the beach and just, enjoy the summer, or, I'm just going to throw everything away. But the most successful authors the most successful entrepreneurs that I saw were those who pivoted, or they did something different. So some pivoted, if they were providing a product, they pivoted into providing a service. So I've been working with a client. She publishes this Thursday, 2 days time. And in March, she lost her biggest client. So lockdown hit, she lost her biggest client. And she did two things. One is she got on and finished her book. So it publishes on Thursday. And the second thing is she launched an online boot camp. So she's taken 45 people through her boot camp now, and she's launching her book on Thursday. So that is where she put her focus. So you just have to step up and do something different. When the proverbial hits the fan, you have to do something about it. My plan this year was to put my one-to-one program online. When everything happened in March, we just did it really quickly. So we did it in 6 weeks. We worked all the hours that God sends to get the program online, to test it, to do a soft launch, to do a special offer right at the very beginning, to actually have something that really created brilliant results. So you have to react quickly. And we have a choice. We have a choice to give it everything we've got, or to step back and go, you know what, I'll let someone else do it instead. So we have that choice. Yeah,
do I totally agree. I think the most successful business owners, like what you've just said, they've learned to adapt. They've learned to respond to change as well, because there's a saying that change is the only constant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So once people have sort of got their book and everything, they've either got it from the publisher or they've self-published it, they've done all of that process. What next? How can they leverage the power of the book that they've just written to become an authority? And I realize that this kind of comes into under marketing, which we've just kind of briefly kind of discussed as well. But I imagine that there's a process behind actually getting the book out there and getting it known as well.
Well, maybe there's a plug for this one now.
The book marketing made simple. I love it. Tell us about it.
Well, yeah, I know we've already talked about marketing, Rahini, and book marketing made simple. It breaks marketing down into the 3 chunks. So you've kind of got the pre-launch, which I know we've talked quite a lot about pre-launch. It talks about the launch, and it also talks about the post-launch. So if we look at the launch itself, when we're launching a book, the most successful books are those which really launch with a bang. So you get people to help you to launch your book. So a lot of people follow the Amazon bestseller plan. So there is a strategy to get your book to the #1 on Amazon, which I teach. It's something I did for this book successfully, and I created an online program off the back of it that takes people through the whole process. So there's 7 steps that you need to follow really to make your book, or to help your book to become an Amazon bestseller. But the most important thing is to get as many people helping you as possible when your book launches. In a normal world, we would have book launch parties. I've had four of them myself for 4 of my books. So you might have a book launch party. You might get someone to do some PR for the book. You might do some PR yourself. Podcast interviews. It really is about getting your message out to as many people as possible. It's simple maths. The more people who know about your book, the more people will buy it. The more people will tell their friends about it. The more people it will reach. So talking about your book, blogging about your book, doing podcasts, videos, interviews, lives, all of that integrates together to create the success that you might desire with it. And then of course it's keeping the momentum going, and the most successful authors are the people who are plugging that. This one was published 3 years ago. I still plug it, I still sell it, I still promote it. Even my first one, which came out in 2011, I still get royalties every so often. Not much, but I still get royalties. And I do absolutely nothing with that book because my business has evolved totally since then. But I also know it's making a difference still. It's making a difference because people are buying it and people are using the strategies. It's just my business has evolved since I wrote that.
Yeah, and it's a passive income stream as well.
Yeah, books are a passive income stream, and it's also, I said, what comes off the back of the book as well. And there is something lovely that when the royalties come in every month as well, it's nice to sort of see them pop up and go, oh wow, people are reading it, people are buying it, people are consuming it, and people are doing something with it, which is kind of important for all of us.
I got to ask, could you turn a book into a video or a video series?
Yeah, you could do. Yeah.
What would be the benefit in that?
So probably more likely you might create a course off the back of it. So you might have a book that takes people through. So Becoming an Authority takes people through the 10 principles that I teach. So that's the book that I published last year on audio. So you could follow the 10 principles, you could read it. You could, if you did a course on it, like the Smart Author System, which is the course that I run, you would go into so much more detail, because when you're doing a course or even a video series, which is interactive, and maybe people are paying a little bit more for that, people are going to learn more because they can ask their questions, they can get more time with you. So for example, the Smart Author System that I do, people get a 1-hour one-to-one with me. They get access to an online Make It Happen day with me, which is a group day. And they get access to a Facebook group. So there's more of me that they would get through that, which they wouldn't get through the book. And that is the differentiator. And I've got 10 principles that I teach through the book, 10 principles I teach through the program, and I just run the program over a 6-week online course. So yeah, I think the book may be just one way of accessing it. And also, Rahini, some people might prefer to watch videos, some people might prefer to read a book. So you're hitting multiple preferences in terms of how people prefer to consume information. Yeah,
definitely. And this is one of the reasons why I always say to people, if you're going to post a video, do a description about what the video is about, because some people they need that written text, don't they? They prefer that as opposed to something more visual as well.
Yeah, some people much prefer to read a transcript than actually watch a video, because maybe they read quicker, they consume information in that way. I'm a very visual person.
Yeah.
So I don't generally, although I recorded Becoming an Authority for an experiment as an audiobook, I am much more of a print book person. I have got bookshelves full of books and books everywhere, because I consume information in that way, but not everyone's like me. So it's just really being able to tap into different people's preferences. But it's having that commercial thought, how can I monetize my knowledge and my information? So what is the best way of doing it? And that's really, a book is just one part of the puzzle, one part of the jigsaw.
Yeah. Well, like you said earlier, it's one part of the marketing asset, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's helping towards other things as well.
Yeah, it's an asset. It's an asset when you take what you know out of your head into a. And I think one of the things I find with many clients is writing the book gives them absolute clarity of their message. Because how many of us have really sat down and thought about what is my end-to-end process? What do I know? What do I teach on a day-to-day basis? You might teach this, you might teach that, but how does it fit together? And once you know that, the clarity that people get through their message, what they stand for, what they want to get known for, and also the clarity in terms of, how it fits into their business, their message, what's out there on their website. It all comes together so neatly, because people forget. And I think the thing that you find easy is the thing that people want to know about. But because you find it easy, you don't realize the value of what you know. And we all find that, I think.
Yeah, totally. I mean, from a writing perspective, and I imagine that this depends on the length of the book as well, but is it quite time consuming? And if it is, like, how can people manage their time? Because a lot of people watching this, they're busy. They're busy business owners. They've barely got any time for themselves, let alone to write a book. So let's talk a little bit about time management for those people.
Yeah, so that's a really great question, Rohini, and that's something I get asked a lot. And a lot of people think it takes so long to write it, I'm not going to get started, because they don't want to start and not finish it. But actually, when you're organized and you do the planning, it makes it easier to write. So, for example, for somebody who works with me, one of the things I get them to do after they're really clear on what they're writing and who it's for, etc., and then we've started to do the structure, is that they bring all of their knowledge together in one place. Because you might have videos that you could get transcribed that could be part of your book. You might have audios that could be transcribed, could be part of your book. You might have blog posts that you've written. You have probably got all the material you need for the book. You just need to bring it together into a seamless process, into a seamless book. So that's one of the things I suggest people do. And actually, it doesn't have to be different. Sorry?
Is it expensive?
What, to get things transcribed? If you use something like rev.com or something like
writing a book and getting it published.
Well, moving back to kind of bringing it together from a sort of how long it takes, if you had half a day a week and you dedicated that to your book, you should get it written in 6 months. Because if you think, half a day a week, you could probably write around about 2,000 words. And if you did that consistently, you would have around about 50,000 words 6 months later. And if people have more time right now because of lockdown, they could write their book quicker. And in terms of the cost, how much it costs, it really depends on how much support you get. You don't need a book mentor or somebody to help you, but actually you can, you'd get it done so much quicker. You get somebody supporting you, kicking your backside when you need it, helping you through the whole process. And that's really where the value of someone like myself comes in, is that we help, we make it easy for you to write it. So you could be still floundering in 2 years' time. But if someone works with me, they get their book written quickly because they've got me by their side every step of the way. So how long's a piece of string? You could do everything yourself if you wanted to, but that is a huge blooming learning curve. Believe me, and it's so easy to get it wrong if you choose the right people, because you don't know the best way of doing it. So, for example, if you put your book direct on Amazon, you really restrict your reach, but not many people know that. So working with experts is the thing, that if you can afford to invest in an expert, you're going to get that expert result, and you're going to get an expert book at the end of it.
This is something that I always do as well. I mean, and I was actually talking with someone about this the other day, because I'm looking to put together a course. I'm in the process of doing that at the moment. And I was speaking to somebody who actually does that for a living. She helps business owners put courses together and sell them. Yeah. And she goes, well, I can put you on an online course where we teach you how to sell a course and to create a course. And it's 10 weeks. And I was like, okay, how much is it for your time? Because I want to fast track the process. Yeah. And for that little bit of extra investment, and I say it's an investment because it is an investment, because it's you're fast tracking everything basically. And I think a lot of business owners, they have this thing of thinking, they look at the upfront cost and they almost don't see the long-term gain. I mean, whenever I'm looking at online courses, for example, I always go to the course creator and say, how much is it for X amount of your time, so I can fast track everything, because time is money at the end of the day. So I think with what you have to offer, it's so valuable for people as well, like for anyone who's starting out in publishing as well. And I know you only work with specific clients as well, so non-fiction you mentioned as well. So people, if you've got made up stories in your mind, that's not really your forte.
No.
So how can somebody get in touch with you if they did want to get involved in your services or buy one of your books even?
So the best place to go is librotas.com, which is L-I-B for Bravo, R-O-T-A-S, so Libro as in book and tas on the end. And you can get hold of me there. There's loads of freebies on the website. So you can get hold of the Get Started workbook, which is the 21 questions that every author needs to ask themselves before they get started. So that's a free download. There's the Smart Author Masterclass if you want to find out a bit about me, learn about some of the mistakes people have made, and also what you can do to get started. And all of my books and all of my client books are on there as well. So everybody who's worked with me one-to-one over the last 6 years, their books are on there. So you can just get a feel for how I work and the type of people I work with. But the best place to start is the Get Started workbook, because everybody loves it, because it really makes them think, and it makes them, start to crystallize their idea before they start writing it.
Yeah, amazing. Guys, I'd highly recommend at least booking in a one-to-one with Karen, because her knowledge is vast. Her energy is just incredible, as you can see as well. And you know what? Even if you're not thinking about creating a book, I would still recommend getting in touch with her, because she's got a massive network for starters, but also the knowledge that she teaches is transferable as well, just like the knowledge that I teach in video marketing. It's transferable as well. So you never know where these conversations can lead to as well. And that kind of brings me on to my kind of last question, really. So for people who are ready to really pursue their dreams, what do they need to get crystal clear on before they get started? And I know we kind of briefly touched on this before about the preparation stages, but is there anything else that people just need to know about before they get started on their journey?
I think I'm just going to reiterate what some of the stuff I've already said, in as much as, the very first principle I teach is starting with the end in mind. And there are 3 parts to that. So the very first thing is to get really clear on your vision. What is your book going to give you don't have already? Imagine that we're a year from now and you've written your book, you've got your book in your hand. What would you like to have said you've achieved during that year, as well as writing your book? Imagine it was 5 years' time. Just project yourself in the future and actually look at what you could achieve through writing your book. The second one is alignment. How is your book aligned to your business? What is your book about? Who is it for? And then the third thing is leverage. How are you going to leverage your knowledge, your story, your experiences, everything people tell you you're good at? How can you leverage that through a book, and how does your book fit into everything else that you do? So for me, if people do nothing else, they think about that, because that is so relevant to every part of a business. Whether you're writing a book or not, that is going to help you to grow your business, because you're taking that step back to take that step forward and going, okay, so this is me now. Where do I want to take all of this, and how am I going to show up? And obviously a book is a really great way of showing up in a bigger way and putting yourself out there.
Yeah. So if somebody's just on the verge of thinking, I really want to write this book, but they've got a block around it for whatever reason. Maybe they're thinking, I don't know where to start. I don't have the time for it. I don't know what I'm doing. For whatever reason that they've not started, what would you say to those people?
I would say download the Get Started workbook. That is what it's designed for. The Get Started workbook is designed to help people. That's on my website. If you go to librotas.com, it's on the front page of my website. It's a little video, and you can get started with that. And it just gives you some questions to really start to think, okay, so what am I actually doing with this book? I've had this dream, and so many people have had a dream for years, and it helps you to get the ideas out of your head in a logical way, so you can decide, okay, am I writing one book? Am I writing more than one book? Who is it for? Where do I need to start? What am I including? So it just gives people just some questions to think about to get started.
You're essentially helping them to raise their own self-awareness then, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Guys, we're going to wrap it up here. I really, really appreciate you jumping on, watching. I definitely recommend checking out Librotas, because the resources are just incredible. I don't interview people that are just full of fluff on here. I interview experts in their space as well, and that's exactly what Karen is. She's an absolute authority. She's helped so many business owners just get their name out there using books, and just leverage the power of publishing essentially as well. So I think at the very least, at least connect with her for a one-to-one, because she is just amazing. So guys, we're going to wrap it up here. Have an amazing week, whatever you're doing. And make sure you join us next week. Actually, we have got a guest on who's just got an incredible Really, really super inspiring backstory, and I'm so excited for her to share that with you guys. Karen, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Bye.